Hi everyone, welcome to week 1 of Current Employment Resources. If you've not already done so, before beginning the content for this course, please go back and have a look at the course outline as well as the video that reviews the course outline and the requirements for the course. This will help you to have an understanding of the context in which all of the content for this week and the weeks that follow, how that fits into the overall course. In this first week's session, we will be looking primarily at just an introduction to the course, and mainly we will just be revisiting Frank Parsons' three-step model, which was introduced to you in the fall in the theories course. This model will be forming an important part of the course in terms of assignments and so on. So as an introduction, I just want to comment on a couple of points. So one of the many roles that you will be playing in the field is as an information specialist. If you are already working in the field, you most likely already know this, that clients often call upon people in these types of roles to provide information to them on a wide range of topics. So this would mean that clients are going to ask you an infinite number of questions, sometimes on topics that you know nothing about. And one of the advantages to that is that you will then research a particular area, and now you know that information if another client does ask you. So you do need to know how to find, organize, and evaluate sources of information. And do keep in mind that it's impossible for any practitioner to know all the information that's out there, to be on top of every possible field, to be able to answer every last question that a client might ask. So what this is going to mean is that clients will ask you questions that you don't know how to answer, and you're going to need to go and research in order to provide the client with information to answer their question, and you're going to turn up a lot of information. So as it says here, you need to know how to find, organize, and evaluate sources of information. So that's one of the things you're going to learn how to do in this course. So some examples of questions that clients might ask you, and there's obviously an infinite list. A client might say, I like sports. What kinds of jobs could I get that involve sports? So just think about that question for a moment. If a client asked you that question, would you know how to respond? Would you have any information to share with them? And if not, would you know where to research and where to look for information? Another example might be, where can I take a nursing program part-time? Or what are the best programs to take to get a job after graduation? Or how do I get my engineering credentials from my country recognized so that I can work in Canada? So now if you've read these questions and thought, I have no idea how I would respond to this, I have no idea how to answer questions like that, I hope that you don't let that sort of increase your anxiety about working in the field with clients. Ultimately, you'll find as you're working in the field that you will get asked a lot of the same types of questions. And as long as you're educating yourself about the resources that are available, you will be able to at least do some research and find information to respond to a client's question. It's really important that you understand that no one person can know it all. So I want to take that pressure off you right away. But through this course, you will learn what are, valuable and reliable sources of information that you would be able to go to if you needed to answer questions for clients. I want to just look briefly at some ethical considerations. So your obligation when you are working with clients is to provide them with up-to-date, accurate, and unbiased information that fits with their needs and goals. So providing a client a ton of information on something that they have not asked about is not going to be helpful to them, and in particular providing them with a ton of information is not a good thing to do. Clients can easily become overwhelmed. It's important to realize that although this is not life and death, you can harm clients by not knowing information that can help them, by giving them wrong or outdated information, or by deliberately withholding information from them. So you can really affect a person's life by the kind of information you give or don't give. One example that stands out in my mind is I had a student in one of my programs a few years back who was there under second career funding. And if you don't know what that means, you will get some exposure to that in the program. And in one of the courses, as we were talking about sharing information, and again, you're not necessarily going to kill somebody, but you can really affect their life if you don't do this properly. So the student that I was thinking of said that she should have been in the program a year sooner than when she was there. And she said the reason that she was not, she lost a whole year, was because one of the first career counselors, career development practitioners she saw, did not seem to know anything about second career and never brought it up as an option for the client. And some months later, she came across the information on her own and realized that if she had been given that information at the time that she needed it, she would have been already in her educational program a year sooner. So in effect, she lost a year because she did not get the right information from a practitioner. So really important that we, be aware of how essential it is that we provide clients with the right information at the right time and that fits with their goals and their needs. So how do you know a client's need? How would you know that you need to provide them with a particular type of information? Well, first, you're going to do a full intake or needs assessment, right? So every time you meet with a client, initially, you want to find out what are their goals, what are their needs, and that will then dictate or suggest directions that you might go in terms of exploration with the client. You can also identify what clients need by identifying their stage using the career life planning model that you'll learn in this course. And it's a very simple 3-step model, but do not underestimate its effectiveness. These 3 areas will allow you, if you understand them and the flow of them, will allow you to target the right kind of information and help a client understand where are they in this process and what do they need to do in order to get to the next step. So by doing a full intake and identifying their stage, you can then select and match resources to fit with the client's current stage and goals. And as I've mentioned previously, this career life planning model that we're going to look at in this course is based on Parsons' 3-step process that you were exposed to in the fall. So remember, these 3 stages are: who am I? Having knowledge of self. What's out there? Knowledge of the world of work, occupations, employers, educational pathways. Aiming to try and match who am I and what's out there to create an action plan. So once you've been able to match those first 2 steps together and generate some areas for the client to explore, then you can begin working with the client on how do I get there, help them to make a choice or a decision, and to create a plan to achieve it. You will play a critical role in helping clients to move through these 3 steps. So again, please do not, because it's a simple model, it's easy to underestimate the value that it might have for clients. You will need to know what resources are available to you and your client in each stage of the model. So in this course, you're going to begin learning about some of the resources so that at the end of the course, you will have some resources organized into all 3 areas, and that can form the basis of your kind of go-to resource list to start with. Knowing, of course, again, that we can't know all the resources that are out there, but there will be certain ones that you may come back to on a regular basis, and we'll talk about some of those in the weeks ahead. So just to remind you of step 1, gaining self-understanding, who am I? You can see the list there. This is the same thing that you saw in the fall in the theories course. So things that we want to explore as part of the who am I stage to gain self-understanding, things like aptitudes, achievements, interests, values, personality, preferences, skills, all of those things. So, for example, we in the informal assessments course, you have been doing a series of activities. For example, you did something on the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, which would suggest some things about your personality. You've done the Who Am I so far, which would suggest things about your interests. Later in the course, we're going to be doing some other activities like the COP system and card sorts that help you get at things like your values and your skills. And then in other courses, you're also looking at things like your achievements. So these are all areas, and there are certainly others that you might explore as part of helping an individual understand themselves. and think about who they are. The ways that we can do this is through, for example, assessment tools. So some of the things you're learning through the informal assessments course, storytelling or narrative approaches, searching for dependable strengths. Those are just a few ways that we can help a client to think more deeply and understand themselves more effectively. Although the work that you're doing in the program and you may be doing in the field lends itself to us as practitioners having greater self-awareness around these things, most people, especially when they start a job search, don't necessarily think to stop and spend time on understanding fully, doing a bit of an inventory of who they are right now at this point in their life. The better you understand yourself, the better you have a good picture of all of these things, the more easily you're going to be able to articulate some of those things when you're in a job interview. So we really need to help our clients to stop and understand and accept that before they jump into a job search, that they really need to stop and give some thought to this who am I question. It's very important. When you have done whatever you're going to do with a client to help them generate material and information that fits within this category, what you're going to do as your role is to help the client to identify some general themes that seem to emerge. And this is really important. Let the client determine what occupations they want to explore. And we have talked a lot about this in the courses that I have been delivering in the program, and I'm sure in the other courses, that it's so critical when we're advising clients and providing them with them some guidance and facilitation around what occupations they might explore, that we fully empower them to determine what direction they want to explore, that we do not influence or coerce them in any way based on our own feelings or preferences about occupations. So we've talked about this a lot, and we will continue to come back to this point in this course, that clients have the right to self-determination. And it's really important, in particular, if we think that a client is maybe not suited for an occupation or maybe doesn't have the right skills or qualities. We need to remember there are lots of examples of people who have succeeded in fields despite predictions by other people that they didn't have the ability. So we can find lots of examples of that. Even in the musical world, there are plenty of examples of groups that went on to become smash hits who were initially told by record producers, you don't have any talent, go home. Elvis Presley, who you may or may not know, was a very famous singer in the 50s and 60s, and he was initially a truck driver, and in one of his auditions he was told to go back to driving a truck. So really, really important that we remember that clients are experts on themselves. We do not have the right to steal their dreams from them or to try and force or coerce them into a direction that they really don't want to go, no matter how much we think their results suggest that that's something they should do. The second step is obtaining knowledge about the world of work. So once you have a good understanding of yourself, what is available to you out there in the working world or the educational world that seems like it's a match with your interests, your values, and your abilities. So this exploration is guided, of course, by information from step 1. We want to help the client explore occupations and educational pathways that fit with what is known about oneself. So occupational information is available from a wide range of sources. It's an unlimited field out there in terms of researching, and again, it can be very overwhelming for both you as a practitioner and as a client. So eventually you will be able to learn through this course how to identify the appropriate resources and kind of narrow it down. One thing that's extremely important is to ensure that information is unbiased, and you will be learning, I believe in week 2, a model for how to assess or critique a particular resource. As I've said previously, you can't remember all information about all occupations or educational pathways, but you do need to know where to find information. And again, that's one of the things you'll learn through this course. Here are some examples of the types of things that you can be looking for when you are helping a client with information in this category. And again, you can see there's a huge list of different ways that you can explore types of occupational information. So of course you can find descriptions of occupations. They're quite readily available out there, qualifications to work in a field, educational requirements and pathways, working conditions, salaries, employment outlook. So is a particular field going to increase? There's going to be more employment opportunities or are going to be fewer. Same with advancement opportunities. Similar careers is very important because sometimes people get fixated on a specific job title and they don't realize that there are many other related types of occupations. And sometimes there are jobs that you're doing exactly the same thing, but you've got different titles. So really important that we help our clients to expand their thinking and their perspective of a particular field and to look at similar careers. And then we also need to be aware of specific information for women and minorities and individuals with other types of challenges. So we need to have sometimes specialized information. As one example, perhaps you are working in a program which is promoting trades for women, where often women are underrepresented. So if you are working with women who are interested in trades, possibly, you're going to be in a good position to provide them with information about those types of programs. If you don't specialize in that, you may not think to offer that information to a client. In addition, there are different classification systems to help look at all of this information. So of course the National Occupational Classification Codes, the NOCs, are predominantly used in Canada, and they're very valuable and can provide most, if not all, of this type of information that you see on this slide. But you may use others in the course of your work, and in fact I encourage you to use other classification systems. ONET, for example, is US based, but you can make some use of it, provided that you are filtering that information through, the Canadian lens. And then you may supplement the NOC codes with information from industry-specific sources. So again, tons of information available out there. We're going to explore some of those resources through this course. And again, important to ensure the objectivity of the sources, and that's something that we'll be looking at in week 2. Just to remind you about the NOC codes, you did have a bit of exposure to them in the fall. The NOC provides a standard framework for organizing and locating occupational titles in Canada, and it was first introduced in the 1990s. It is updated regularly about every 5 years, so it's important to, sort of think about that. Is every 5 years, is that sufficient? Does that give you enough updated information? So it's important, again, to look at the information in the NOCs with a critical eye. How long ago was it updated? If we're getting close to that, 3, 4, 5 year window, then you may want to ensure that you're looking at other sources of information that allow you to provide more updated information, particularly in fields where things can really change quite quickly. Within a 5-year period, a whole lot of change can happen. But one of the good things about the NOC is that it is based on multiple reliable sources, such as statistical surveys. So I would say probably the one main weakness in the NOC is that as we get closer into that 5-year period, that 5-year term of the information, as we get closer to the end of that 5 years, the information may become more and more outdated. The NOC codes, of course, describe the kind of work performed and the groups occupations that do similar work. So going back to what I said previously about finding similar occupations, and it groups the occupational categories into 4-digit codes, as you saw when you tried it out in the fall. So again, this is helpful for identifying related occupations for clients, helps to keep options open, and prevents focusing on just one job title. It's really important to note that new occupations are constantly being developed while some occupations are disappearing. So again, important to supplement those NOC codes with more up-to-date information. Another aspect of obtaining knowledge about the world of work is looking at trait and factor requirements. And you can remember, I hope, the trait and factor concept and theoretical approach from the fall course, the theories. So occupational information can be related directly to clients' traits when we're taking this approach. And so descriptions can allow clients to assess the fit between their aptitudes, achievements, interests, values, and personality with a particular occupation. And can help them rule something in or rule something out. So, for example, someone who enjoys working outdoors with their hands may read an occupational description of work that requires being inside and working on a computer. So they could read that, and even though it might seem to fit with some of their interests, they then can read that and say, well, no, I really want to be doing something more with my hands or being more outdoors. So it can help them to rule occupations out, as well as identify occupations they want to explore. And then the third step, of course, is integrating information about oneself and the world of work from Parsons' model. And this was kind of expanded on as the years went on after Parsons issued his model to incorporate how do I get there. So we want to incorporate this action component. So once the information about oneself in step 1 and the world of work, step 2, has been integrated, in other words, the client has, as a result of doing the step 1 and step 2 work, has identified some possible options that seem to be a good fit for them, then we can put those things together and then formulate some goals and an action plan, which we talk about in this model as we call, how do I get there? So as a career development practitioner, you play a very important role in identifying themes and areas of consistency in steps 1 and 2 and interpreting any inconsistencies. And often that is the most challenging thing. You know, keep in mind that some tools generate different information, even though it sounds like they should be focused on the same thing. Tools are all a little bit different. So inconsistencies are not necessarily a bad thing. You just need to have to look at those a little bit more closely and help the client understand why are these results a little bit different. It's really important when the client is trying to make these choices to help them balance reason and objective thinking with feelings and subjective preferences. And what I mean by that, as an example, is I used to do, when I worked in the counseling office at George Brown, I used to have a lot of students come in to see me who had discovered at some point in their program that they really didn't like doing the program, doing what they were doing. So one that really stands out for me is this usually would happen with the nursing program when the students went out on their first clinical placement. Some of them would come back and say, ooh, I really didn't understand the reality of working with patients and with people that are sick and, being in a hospital and realizing that, the sight of blood makes me faint. So when I would explore with those students, how did they make their choice? Well, I just love the idea of helping people. I love the idea of, making things better for people. So that suggested to me that they made their choice based on feelings and subjective preferences. They had this idealized vision that excited them of what it meant to be a nurse. But now when they face the reality and step back and look at it objectively, they realize this is really not for me. So it's important to help the client try to balance those two things. A client may be very excited about going into a particular occupation, but the reality may be that jobs are hard to find, and they may not be able to find a job when they graduate, at least not right away, find a full-time job. So that doesn't mean necessarily that they should be, they should decide not to pursue that, but at least they're going in with a more realistic and objective view of what they might be facing when they finish their program. So clients may cycle through these 3 steps any number of times before decisions are made. It's not a 1, 2, 3 lockstep process. Clients will often go back and forth before we finally get down to creating an action plan. Some other important considerations are that it's essential to consider gender and cultural differences throughout this process. So as an example, for myself, coming from a westernized perspective, to me, every occupation is open to every gender. But some people may come from cultural backgrounds, if they've immigrated to this country, with a different perspective. And so if I'm working, for example, with a female client, and I think that she should be open to every occupation and not eliminate anything based on her gender, then I'm not respecting her perspectives. I may make it clear to her that, it is open to you, whatever you would like to choose, but there may be times that I have to accept that a client may feel that a particular type of field is just not appropriate for them based on their gender, and I have to respect that as someone's cultural value. It's important to keep remembering that assessment tools are not used to tell clients what occupation they should choose. We want to, and let me just finish my thought here first. So clients may sometimes want us to interpret their results that way, and the reason is that some people can fall into the trap of seeing the tools as a test, and the test has right or wrong answers. So very, very important that we try to avoid using that word test, and that we keep emphasizing these results are not meant to tell you exactly what to do. They're meant to guide you in opening up options, but you're going to ultimately decide which option or options you'd like to explore. And it's really important as part of this to recognize that assessment results are the beginning of self-insight, not the end. So it's not meant to again communicate this sense of, okay, I did these assessment tools, here's the results, now I'm going to go, to try and just be a little more thoughtful and slow the process down enough so that the client really is thinking through these options. Some other important considerations: counselor self-awareness is important. So the client may have different values than the counselor. And I gave you a good example of that in terms of, gender influencing occupational choices. Another example could be that maybe you are a very ambitious person and you think it's really important to aim for the highest, most challenging job in whatever your field of interest is. But not everybody feels that way. Some people, for example, having a balanced life and lifestyle integration may be more important to them. So they don't necessarily want to aim for the highest, most challenging, stressful job there is. So really important that you put your own values aside and that you work with wherever the client is at. Going back to that concept of being where the client is. So it's essential to avoid influencing clients' choices based on what you think are good occupations or values, and doing that either explicitly by telling the client directly or implicitly implying with your body language or your facial expressions what you think would be good choices for the client. So as an example, if being an accountant comes up in their results and you think accounting is incredibly boring, and you say to the client, well, okay, so I can see here that, and you're making a face. You can't see my face right now, but you'd be making a face or implying in some way that you don't think that that's a particularly good occupation. So you want to be careful about that. Again, some clients may want you to tell them what to do. You must resist doing this and encourage the client to keep exploring. You can say to a client, it seems clear from your results and from the way you've reacted to your results that, creative activities are obviously of interest to you. So, let's explore that theme, or that you've got a couple of different themes here. So let's have a look through those and see what occupations seem to be of interest to you. So that's it for this week, and there is a little bit of homework to do. There is a discussion board under week 1 on Blackboard. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to do the activities suggested and respond to the questions listed. They're just going to be questions around things like, how do you approach doing research? What are some of your favorite sources of information? And so on. So this activity is just worth 5%, and you're going to receive the 5 marks for your posting provided that you respond to all of the required questions. There is also a syllabus under week 1 that outlines, and that'll be the case for every week. There will be a short syllabus that provides you with an overview, a little more detail than what's on the course outline, an overview of what you're going to be doing that week. So as long as you complete everything that's on the syllabus, you've done your work for the week. Of course, you can work ahead in the course because it's all online. I'm not sure at the beginning of the course whether the entire course will be up, but hopefully at least the first couple of weeks will be there so you can get started, and I will continue to load materials in the weeks ahead as soon as they become available. So that is all for our presentation for this week, and thank you very much for listening, and as always, do let me know if you have any questions.